Hello, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be playing with the man who is billed everywhere as the world's hottest classical guitarist, Miloš, a man who goes by one name. And I guess that almost says it all, doesn't it? It shows that really there's a profile and a reputation that comes along with it. And really, I mean, I was reading BBC Music Magazine has put you on a list of the 6 greatest classical guitarists of the last century. That's pretty amazing. And another quote that called you the classical music's guitar hero and all kinds of great. I mean, you've been doing really incredible things to make an instrument that interestingly enough, almost kind of paradoxically, it's the world's most popular instrument, but for mostly other styles of music than classical. So it's great to see what you've been doing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the guitar and the role that it plays, because interestingly enough, I mean, the music is so fantastic. Guitar is a wonderful instrument, and there have been great guitarists. And I think back to the 70s, of course, we were just hearing Segovia, and he was sort of, his reputation, his career was winding down. And then there were some really young players, tremendous, notably Julian Bream and John Williams. And then guitar seems to have sort of faded away to a degree. And then here you come on the scene. So how does guitar fit into today's classical music world?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for that very nice introduction. Some of those quotes really and truly make me blush because, when you're an artist and when you're just doing the best you can do, and then other people talk about you in this way or that way, it always feels a bit weird. I still can't get over that even after all these years. But when I think of the classical guitar and when I think of the time when I was a student at the Royal Academy in London, it was a very, very different time to where we live today, because in those years, it was very rare to see a classical guitar recital in the concert series of an important venue. There would occasionally be a concerto performance of Rodrigo's concerto with a big symphony orchestra, but guitar was really kind of existing in a sort of an isolated world of classical guitar. And this is a wonderful world, and it's a very nice world to belong to, because you're sharing your passion and what you are doing with your colleagues, and you are coexisting in this sort of very cocooned, wonderful universe of the guitar. But that was something that just didn't make me very happy. I thought that we are really missing a point by doing that. I thought that there is so much more we can do, because there was not even one single young person that I have met through my life, family friend of a friend, who hasn't at some point tried to play the guitar. They always call it either the Spanish guitar or the acoustic guitar or this guitar, that guitar, but it's always the guitar. And whenever I played for those people who don't have the background in classical music, I always found the most amazing response from those people, because it was something that they could instantly connect to. Because guitar is the instrument of the people, it's loved by people, and it doesn't scare anyone. And it doesn't really matter if you come from a tradition of family that regularly attends opera and concerts, or you just like popular music. And for me, this was very, very exciting, and something that made me really persevere and really try very, very hard to break this wall and go really beyond what was perceived as possible. So, it was tremendous amount of work and a bit of luck. And then I signed my contract with Deutsche Grammophon in 2010. And suddenly found myself playing concerts all around the world, and really being the sort of a person who carries the flag for the instrument in this time. And that comes with a huge amount of responsibility as well. And that wasn't always easy. And I have to say that I have learned so much in that process, because nothing that you learn at the music college can prepare you for what really awaits you when you finally enter that sort of a profession on the absolute highest level, when it is your face on the brochure of the concert hall, when it is a classical release which is selling in hundreds of thousands of copies, and you always have to balance what it is. I'm digressing a lot because it's such a huge subject, but it's you always have to balance between who you are as an artist and what is expected of you, and what kind of music do you play, and is that the right thing to do. But you can only do your best, and I think that that we have done pretty well. And I think that to go back to your question, where classical guitar stands in terms of classical music today, is something that is a huge satisfaction for me to see, because I see a lot of my colleagues doing very well. I see a lot of young people doing really well, and having this sort of feeling that with classical guitar they can go beyond, that they can go further. There are new ideas coming out of younger artists. It's not a question of doing what Miloš did. It's a question of doing what I want to do, and that always makes me so excited, because there is really and truly some wonderful talent out there. And yeah, so I think for classical guitar the future is bright, because I think we now understood that we have a huge asset and a huge advantage, exactly in this sort of nature of the instrument and the appreciation of the instrument in the mainstream public, which cannot always be said for the kind of great classical instruments, where very often you see that, you know, the audiences are struggling to go to the concert hall and so on. So yeah, I think that's a long answer, but you asked for it, Julian.
Well, it's I find it fascinating, because I've been presenting classical music concerts and playing for now a few decades here. And guitar, I've always felt, is immediately appealing, and in a way, it should be both the instrument for connoisseurs when we play this repertoire that's created just for the guitar, but also the bridge to people that might not normally come out to classical music. And that's kind of what Music and Beyond is all about. We're here to develop audiences for classical music, and we put on guitarists regularly over the years, and somehow I think there's an element of trust with the public that maybe isn't always there, that they're not quite sure if they're going to like it. They think it might be pop music, or there might be something or other. And I think you've managed to transcend that. I mean, with the absolutely remarkable partnership you've had with Deutsche Grammophon, I mean, 4 fabulous CDs, right? And a 5th one coming out that you're going to be talking about pretty soon. So that would be great to see. But I have to say, you know, and I'll just, if I can digress for a few minutes. Last summer, I was asked to come and join and play with you in Niagara-on-the-Lake in August, and normally that's a bit of a downtime. And I thought, no, let's take a vacation, and I'm going to go and enjoy this. I'd heard some good things about you, and I brought my son. We took a trip. It was an absolute delight. And not having played with you, I'd heard some recordings that I thought were lovely, but you never quite know. And I thought, wow, what a great experience. And I have to say to anybody listening to this, at the end of the concert, people just went crazy. They absolutely, and even afterwards, I went out, and my son and I, we went out for a meal. I took my 11-year-old for a meal afterwards, and people came up in this pub, and they were talking about how much they enjoyed the concert, and it was just a great feeling. And throughout, I thought both with your choice of repertoire, and we're going to be repeating that program at Music and Beyond, your choice of repertoire, and just the way you played the pieces, just you found a very compelling way to bring out the most exciting and interesting and most beautiful elements in it. I thought it was very effective. So I'm really hoping that we can just absolutely pack your concerts. I'm very much looking forward to it. But in terms of building those bridges with, do you have any thoughts on how we, on how you reach out to people that might not normally come out to classical music concerts?
I mean, my number one rule in concerts is that I only play pieces and repertoire that I personally enjoy, because I know that if I enjoy them, I will find a way to communicate them to the audience. And if something feels like a drag to me, even if a promoter or a presenter is asking me to play it, I will normally not do it, because I feel like I don't really, in that case, have something to say with it, and I should leave it for other people. And I've always been excited by this sort of extremes that you can take the guitar in terms of repertoire too. And for me, whether you play a work of a lute suite by Bach, or you play a soar Rossiniana or Giuliani, or if you play contemporary piece or something that was written in the 20th century, like Inastera or Britten or Berkeley, or you decide to take the instrument and make really fabulous arrangements of whether it's the Beatles or Coldplay or anything that stood the test of time. You know, it's I don't know. I don't see much of a difference. I just see it as one big thing. I see music as one big thing, as a universal world of music. And this sort of compartmentalizing of styles and genres and ideas, I find very limiting. And as a guitarist, I really and truly feel that there is really no danger in any way upsetting or alienating anyone, because if you use what you've got and your art and your education and your training, and you put it in almost any part of the repertoire of value. I'm not talking about, because there's a lot of bad music, but I'm talking about good music, which exists in all the genres. Then you are really crossing over in the crossover that is a very positive thing. And a crossover, you know, it's like a dirty word in our world, and actually shouldn't be, because I think the ultimate goal of being a concert artist and a musician in the 21st century is to cross over, and to cross over in the right way, where the assets and qualities of all the different music join into this one wonderful expression. And I always try to create and to give away this message when I am performing around the world. And the program that we played together in Niagara-on-the-Lake, such a beautiful place, and the church, it always feels like that with the audiences, because I think they come in and they don't really know what hits them, because they are just taken on this wonderful trip from Bach to the Beatles, and now maybe we will go even beyond, and that excites me.
Well, it's really interesting because I feel that, you know, the other group, we have people that aren't really classical music fans that fear they might not enjoy the concert. And I know they'll enjoy your concert. Then there's the other category of people, the really diehard classical music fans that might fear they're not going to enjoy some of the sort of crossover tunes. And sometimes that is the case. We hear crossover music that really isn't that appealing. But in your concert, I have to say, I mean, you played this Beatles set. I remember they were incredible arrangements. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And I know that the Beatles sort of came quite a bit after you studied a whole lot of other more traditional repertoire.
Yes, absolutely. But the reason why people connect with the Beatles as well as they do with the Bach or the Granados is because at no point in making those arrangements and creating this repertoire on that album in particular, did I approach it with less seriousness or a lesser attitude than I would have if I was recording a whole album of Bach suites. And it's actually more difficult to do than to record an album of Bach suites, because I know how to play Bach. I've been educated and I've studied. I've taken a very scholarly approach to that music. And with the Beatles, that was completely new to me. I had to learn how to adjust what I've got, put it into their world, and then bring it back to my world. And it's like a huge process. And for that, you have to make very careful decisions, because if it doesn't feel right to you, it's not going to feel right to the audience. And just because it's a famous tune, yes, it's not gonna do anything unless it's played beautifully in an arrangement that you love and you stand behind. And the ones that you are mentioning, those arrangements were made by Christopher Austin, and he's an extraordinary composer. We met at the Royal Academy of Music. He was and still is one of the teachers there. And he was literally the right hand of Peter Maxwell Davies. But then at the same time, he won a Tony Award for Fiddler on the Roof. And then he would do jingles for adverts, and then compose some of the most serious avant-garde atonal music imaginable. And, you know, when you work with the people who have such a broad spectrum of influences and styles and understanding, then there is really no danger that then what you communicate to them and what your wishes are with the arrangement, and when you're putting yourself into the arrangement, that the arrangements are not going to be great. Now I'm working on an interesting next album, because I wanted to go further even from that, and I wanted to see what will happen then. And I have to say, I'm finding it very, very challenging, because I'm a person of extremes, and I want to. I love this sort of process of creating that sort of music versus the traditional repertoire, because I'm excited by what you can do in the studio and how you can make the sound really into something really truly spectacular in relation to the strings or the double bass or the piano or whatever is in the mix for those arrangements. And we'll see what happens. But some of the things that I've been working on and hearing and listening, I've been very pleased with. And I know that there will be people out there who will say, oh, you know, he's now doing commercial stuff and all of that. But actually, I don't care, because just a few months later, I'm going to release an album of 2 world concerto premieres with BBC Symphony Orchestra, and you know, and stuff like that. So you just have to do what feels right, and you have to always be honest to yourself and to your audience as to what feels right. And I think in the beginning of my career, I was so sensitive to every single opinion on every single idea that came. And you know, this person thinks you shouldn't play Villa-Lobos like that, and this person thinks you shouldn't you know, play cheesy Latin tunes, and this person thinks you should really just do 2 hours of Bach and stuff like that. It's like, and I used to take that, I used to lose sleep over these things, and be so insecure. But I think with time you kind of grow into yourself and you kind of understand yourself better, and that's a wonderful place to be. And I think I have kind of arrived to that point, and for that reason I feel also that comes across in my concerts. And what you said in you were expressing how it felt in Niagara-on-the-Lake. That sort of a feeling is something that that I'm talking about, and that's what I live for. Is that sort of immediate connection with the audience, and almost not giving anyone a chance to not like something. Because if everyone on the stage is liking it and creating this amazing energy, it could be your least favorite piece, but you're still going to connect with it, because the power of the energy and of the music in the room is so incredible that it's almost has superpowers. And that's why we are all addicted to this job, is because this gives us this incredible feeling that I think nothing else in the world would.
Well, it's really interesting. You know, I've always wanted to offer a money-back guarantee to somebody, to say, if there's one piece on the program you don't like, I'll give you your money back. And it could be, you know, this one that we're doing on July 13th, The Voice of the Guitar. I can't imagine anybody not liking every single piece on the program. It's that great, and the way they whip them into a frenzy. But let's talk about your recordings. First, I would encourage everybody to search up Miloš, M-I-L-O-S. Guitar. You'll go to his website and his current. There are 4 recordings. Is that right, on Deutsche Grammophon?
Yes, there are 4. And the first one is Mediterraneo, which is south of Mediterranean music, Tárrega, Granados, De Falla, all these incredible things that you immediately connect classical guitar to. Then the second one is Latino, which has all the Latin things. And it was so much fun to make that album, because Latin music is so broad, and you have the tangos and you have the classical repertoire, and it was great fun. And then the third one I had to do was, like, it really felt, was to do the Aranjuez and Fantasia of Rodrigo. And I recorded that actually with your fellow Canadian, with Yannick Nézet-Séguin, who is a very
right.
good
And
friend
Yannick
of mine.
is like yeah, I mean, he's about the hottest thing going on the planet now, with both the music director of pretty well any orchestra he wants. He's really an incredible guy.
Most deservedly, actually.
Yeah.
He's extra. I've never worked with anyone like that. He's just extraordinary. And we recorded those concertos, and then after that was the Beatles. And now let's see. Now it will be something else. But
so that's when you're working on right now. When's is it fully recorded? Are you still recording, in the process of recording it, or?
I'm right in the middle of finishing off the recording. I have one session this week and two more sessions next week, and it's been really intense. Before I checked in to talk to you, I was just learning this one piece I have to record on Friday, which just arrived today, and stuff like that. I mean, it's yeah, it's exciting and also a bit nerve-wracking, but
what is the repertoire? Are you allowed to share that with us now? Is that...
Well, as I said, I will go a step further from the Beatles, and to challenge this idea of universality of music even further,
Right.
and see what happens. Because I wanted to unite pieces and pieces in the classical repertoire with the pieces from the more mainstream repertoire, songs that we really, really like, and then create a sort of style that kind of unites it all, in terms of how the guitar is recorded, how everything feels and gels together. And also, I have to say that from the time that I released the Beatles until now, it's been about 2.5, 3 years, and in this time, so much has changed beyond belief in the way that it works in the world of music, and the power of streaming, of Spotify, of playlists, of all of that. It's really, for someone who actually, right in the middle of my soul, I'm a very core artist. So it's really quite scary when you see that your song is on a playlist of music to study with, or music to cook with, or a dinner with friends, or this and that. And the first couple of times I saw that, I was a bit like, oh my God, all this work so that someone can just say, oh, that sounds lovely, while I'm chopping my garlic, and it's but then you think, why not? If that's how people will access the music and the work and what I'm doing, that makes me happy, because maybe when they see there's a concert down the road, they will maybe be there, and I just love how everything is moving. It's a very interesting time. I mean, not only in music, it's a very weird time in general. It's like it's. I think we are in the middle of huge historic shift in almost every single aspect of life on Earth. But the way it reflects on music is really also fascinating.
Yeah, well,
and it's something we have to incorporate also in our thinking and what we do next, and so on and so forth.
Well, it's incredible to think. I mean, a few decades back, people would have incredible sound systems and they'd just sit in their room and they would listen. That's much more rare now. But at the same time, people love going out to concerts. They love the live concert experience and communicating. So some things remain the same. And I have to say, when I cut garlic, I'm really listening. So dealing with that.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit, just to shift gears. I mean, you have a very interesting background, because I don't think I've ever met another musician from Montenegro. I mean, from the former Yugoslavia, we've met Serbian musicians, we've met Croatian, we've met Slovenian. Tell me about growing up in Montenegro, and I guess it was, when you were a young and a kid and a teenager, it was a tough time in that region.
Well,
what was music like back then?
Yeah, the reason why I haven't met many Montenegrins is because there aren't many of us. It's
Right.
680,000 people. And maybe there is as much living abroad, but that's it. I mean, it's a very, very small country. And yeah, I mean, the situation with music in Montenegro now is very different, again, to how it was in the 90s. Now the country is much more open and in this sort of very chic place for a lot of people who come there on holiday to explore a very exotic, unique country. And it's really one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I mean, it's tiny, but it's just extraordinary, the variety of landscape and this sort of feeling that you are in the Mediterranean, but it's it's Slavic people, so this sort of Eastern Balkans, Southeastern Europe, Balkans, Italian influence, Ottoman influence. It's like a very, it's really fascinating. I don't really know any place like that. And but when I was growing up there, I mean, there was two aspects. It was the aspect of instability and uncertainty, because you never knew whether the war was going to break out in your country or not, or it's going to just stay outside the borders. But whatever happened, you were going to be isolated, because we were unfortunately part of that whole conflict, and politically it was just the most awful time. And the whole sort of general everyday feeling in my childhood was very, very uncertain outside of home. But then there was the home life, and the home life was, I think, as a result of that uncertainty outside of the home, amplified dramatically in the sense of community and unity and family and friendship. And it was at that time that I discovered the guitar, and it was at that time that I discovered what it means to play for people and to create music, and being always very musical. It was just such a wonderful way of creating the world, a kind of a magic bubble, regardless of what was happening outside. And those years, people like my parents, they are kind of typical Montenegrin middle class family. My father worked in a government office. My mother was taking care of us. It was a sort of it was kind of amazing how in those years there was always lunch at 3 o'clock. There was always and the whole day would be free after that. And for summer you would spend 3 months on the coast. And there was very little, there was absolutely no luxury. I mean, there was nothing. Like if my string broke on the guitar, I had to take the old string from another guitar, and that string was probably like 3 years old. There was no sheet music. We had to photocopy everything illegally. There was no CDs. It was like, there was really nothing. There was nothing. But there was, I remember in our house, but what there was a huge bag of flour, sugar, oil, and our mothers were always thinking about how to create the most interesting things with what they had. And there was always these incredible moments that will remain the most special moments of my life, when you are with your family, where there is food, and where there is so much love and support to each other, and placing in all of that the music and the fact that I was playing the guitar. So given all those experiences and the sort of partly luck, but also a huge drive to as a result of understanding that if I really wanted to be a musician, that wasn't really the best place to stay, that I had to leave in order to achieve my dreams and my goals. But having those experiences in those early days really became the absolute essence of who I am as a person today and as a musician today. And I think that if I'm thinking of those amazing moments where I played for people, I think that's exactly what, in some sort of a subconscious way, because I wouldn't really know these things, but now that I'm talking to you, I'm kind of realizing it in the same way as if I was talking to a psychotherapist. It's probably the same sort of sentiment that in some sort of a subconscious way I'm trying to give every time that I'm on stage. And that's why I always, as I said, I always play the repertoire I really want to play. I always try to embrace the audience with what I'm doing, because if I'm feeling it intensely, I almost have no doubt that the people will feel it too. Because that connection somehow for me feels very instant. I don't know.
Wow.
But that's, I think that's probably what's behind, is that sort of upbringing and those circumstances. But you know what? I realized how important that sort of freedom and support and lack of competition as well was when I came to the Royal Academy, because suddenly I was surrounded by students who went to the world's top music schools, who, you know, all had perfect pitch, who had tuition since they were 3, 4 years old, and, you know, who had a huge resources put into them. But the one thing that I felt where I was absolutely superior to them was this sort of freedom. And if someone would ask me how did the concert go, I would say it went brilliant. And they always found that strange. They thought I was arrogant or something, but I wasn't arrogant. I just genuinely felt that it went brilliantly. But if I would ask my colleagues how did it go, and I know that they were the most amazing musicians, maybe better than I was at that time, they'll be like, no, that was rubbish. I made so many mistakes, because they are thinking in the back of their head, their teacher is going to criticize this one scale in the whole thing. Their colleagues and peers, they are going to, you know, gossip behind their back and say that their sound is ugly or this or that. It's like I had no concept of these things. I just played, and that was it. And if I played well, and I thought I played well, that's all that mattered. And that was a powerful realization when I came to the academy.
Wow. What sent you to London, though? I mean, London, of course, is an amazing music center. There's no question about that. But I mean, there are so many great centers. I mean, you're, you know, just as close to Italy, Spain, Paris, Germany. Why London?
In one of the very first trips abroad, when I was 13, 14, it was in 1995, just when the Balkan Wars finished and then the borders opened. And there was a masterclass organized near in Puglia, in East Italy, because that's a direct ferry line of 6 hours with Montenegro. So that's our kind of closest neighbor in the West. And my father and I, we went to have a masterclass because I wanted to hear what real classical guitarists sound like, you know. And David Russell was conducting that masterclass. And it's the first time I met David, and he's been such an inspiration and such a good friend as well. And he, you know, I was very young and very ambitious and curious. And he said to me, well, if you want to take this really seriously, you should go and study at the Royal Academy of Music in London.
Wow.
And for me, that was it. I mean, when he said that, I was like, okay, now I have to find a way to be there. And I worked very hard for the next 2 years, and I couldn't afford to go and do an audition or anything like that. So I went to the British Council in Podgorica, where I'm from, and we filled in the application form. I recorded a cassette with VHS tape with my 5 best pieces, and I sent it over, and I was accepted, and I was given a scholarship, and suddenly I was in London, and it was really like landing on the moon. It was incredible, and that was now 19 years ago, and I still live here.
Wow. Do you get back to Montenegro very often then? Do you ever?
Yeah, I go a couple of times a year. My parents sometimes come to my concerts if they are not too far, because they love also discovering the world through my concerts. Yeah, I mean but it's also a very different place, and I have this sort of an idealized vision of my country and of what I left behind, and of it's just not it's just not the same.
Right.
And I go there and I play there and I love my people, and it's all great, but I have a very sort of nostalgic feeling towards what once was, and those beautiful natural cliffs above the water with pine trees, and the taste and the feeling of that sea. It's just something that I will never forget. And now it's different, because now it's more of a tourist destination, and that's great because people need money to live on. But I don't know. I think there is a whole deal of sacrifice for things like that.
Well, it's a challenge. Now, I wanted to touch on a few other short things before we conclude this podcast. But I know you're a real a really strong exponent of getting young people excited with music. And in Canada, we've certainly had a lot of great success in churning out excellent professional musicians, but it seems that getting just normal kids interested and excited in classical music is a big challenge. Suppose you were with a couple of kids who'd never been to a classical music concert before, and they were going to come and hear your voice of the guitar concert. What would you say to them before the concert so that they would really listen and they would maybe enjoy it even more?
Well, it's very hard to say anything, because I think music exists so that you don't really have to say anything. I think music is one of those incredible ways of human communication that is a language of all people, whether they are young kids or whether they are old. And I just recently played a recital, and there was this 2-year-old boy who came to the concert, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be hell now. And I was really prepared for the worst. And I thought the kid was going to be, moving and screaming and, doing all the things that really shouldn't be happening in a concert venue. But actually, the kid just stayed transfixed and silent and was really the most amazing audience member I have ever had. So I think if you are, this is, I think, where a lot of parents make a mistake, is that they give so many warnings to kids. If they, it's like, I will take you to the concert if you behave, or and if you go to the concert, you have to be silent and not move, and you can't talk, or you can't do this, can't do that. And suddenly you are creating a huge issue for kids. They don't want to be put under so much pressure. But if you just took them along and if they are really naughty, just take them out. And there is common sense with all the things. But my advice is always to just bring, if the child is at the stage where they would appreciate it, because by watching the child at home you will know that if they had the natural affinity or not. Because that way I think we are opening our world, and we can win against all the kitsch that the kids are surrounded with. And all the popular music, which sometimes to my ears sounds as if some of the pop music nowadays really, to my ears, sounds as if it's almost inaudible because of the amount of compression that they are putting on the sound, and the distortion of the sound, and the way that it's recorded. It's just, it gives me this sort of feeling of like almost paranoia. It's like I don't know. I go crazy if I have it in my ears for too long.
Well, it's created to listen through these devices that have almost no bandwidth and just a very, very simple and a very limited frequency range. So
I think so. So I think if you bring a younger person to a concert, and they suddenly are exposed to the actual sound, like, I think it's like seeing the world in color for the first time.
Is it a little bit, I mean, music in today's world is largely relegated to a background role, right? I mean, we hear background in films. People listen to music, but they talk all the way through it. It's rare that you actually listen to it. Is it enough to simply say, this is a great experience and you're going to enjoy it even more if you just listen, and then they get it? Is that sort of what you're saying with that person?
Or if you kind of explain what it is about. I always think that it's very powerful to use imagination and imagery when describing music. And very often I talk in concerts about the pieces I'm about to play, and I give a little bit of background, nothing boring, but like, for example, if I'm playing the Villa Lobos Prelude, I say the composer here really imagined that the guitar would be a cello. And suddenly your ears are really listening, searching for that. Or if I'm playing a piece which the composer was inspired to write because of the Mediterranean Sea and of the movement of the sea and of the waves and of the shapes, and when it's calm and when it's a storm and all of that, it's like you're creating hooks that really make people listen to it with more intensity. And very often when I have friends over for dinner and I want to share with them something that I have heard that I thought was amazing, like an amazing soprano singing, I don't know, something from Rigoletto, or if it's something really exceptional, it's like I say, guys, can I show you this? But she's now singing about letting go of her child that she's never going to see again because she has to flee, and these are stupid operatic stories, but it's about the expression of that moment that we can relate to, and that's why I think operatic arias are so powerful, because they are so relatable regardless of the time. And then immediately people go like, oh my God. And I said, hear that portamento now, where's the breathing? And immediately people go like, wow, I suddenly open a new world. It's like going to the gallery and seeing a blank canvas with the dot, and just saying like, what on earth is this? And then someone explains to you what it is, and then you really say like, okay, wow, I get it.
Yeah, well, it's really great. And I can say, having been at one of Miloš's concerts, right up there on stage and just watching just a couple of sentences that you send out to the audience to give them a handle on it, it's really great. But let's just take a moment and talk a bit about your program. Miloš has 2 concerts on July 13th. It will sell out, so just make sure you don't wait. Get your tickets, because otherwise you will be disappointed by not getting your tickets. You won't be disappointed if you get your tickets and come to it, of course. And then the next day, on the 14th, at Dominion Chalmers, he has a solo recital. But the program, the one that I'll be participating in, is this Voice of the Guitar, which has so much variety. It's a mixture of solo guitar and different works of different styles and different nationalities. And you mentioned Bach. You're opening with a prelude and fugue of Bach, and that's solo guitar. Anything else you want to say about that, other than comparing it to the cello, which sounds like a nice comparison to me? So.
Yeah, well, I just always conceive this sort of program as really a journey from Bach to the Beatles, where we embrace the whole guitar music. And we give it the same emphasis and the same importance, and where through the different styles and different countries and different parts of the repertoire, you really are in a safe place to explore it and to really see what rocks your boat, if you like. And I now played this program over the last year in many different countries, and I have to say, compared to the other things I've done before that, the response has been so much more intense, just because you are really kind of giving an opportunity to almost every audience member to find something that they will go crazy about. And that's something that feels good when after the concert you go to bed and wake up the next day. It feels like you've accomplished your mission.
Right. And then the next day, on the 14th, at Dominion Chalmers, again, air conditioned, I might add, because with global warming, we've been getting some very hot July. So I'm really trying hard.
It's Canada. It can't be that hot.
Just wait, you'll be surprised. It goes through extreme temperatures is the rule. No, we've been setting heat records in July, actually, and that's okay, because then you get outside and you can enjoy this beautiful summer weather. But inside, everybody's comfortable, and we're comfortable, right? We're not sliding all over our instruments and working well. But is it harder to play with other people than just to go out and play a solo recital?
It's just very different. I mean, being just on your own is harder in a sense that you have to be, you are on your own. So the sort of the arsenal of powers and it's much smaller, and it just comes from this very focused, concentrated place. And you have to, for an hour or two, depending on how long the concert is, you have to radiate so much energy to fill up the hall like there is no tomorrow. But when you are playing with other people, then it becomes a completely different game, because while in the solo repertoire, it doesn't really matter. You can manipulate the music as far as you want, and you can create the sort of what feels right in that moment. While when you are working with others, it's really, you have to smell and feel and understand what the energy of the people around you is, and create music together. So it's 2 very, very different things.
Right.
Equally satisfying. I mean, but it depends of the day. Sometimes I really just love to go out and play, and especially if my fingers are feeling amazing, it's just like then playing all this complex repertoire and stuff. It just feels so amazing. And sometimes when you are with others, it's kind of life on the edge, because you change your sound, you change your projection, and everything is much more intensive. So I don't know, just two very different things.
Wow. Well, anyway, people are in for two great concerts. I would encourage anybody watching this to come out on both July 13th for the Voice of the Guitar program with Miloš, and on the 14th in the evening for a solo recital with Miloš. Both will be excellent concerts, and I'm sure they'll be packed, and very much looking forward to seeing you and working with you this July. So thank you for joining us this summer.
Likewise. It's very, very nice to see you again, Julian, and I can't wait to be there.
Okay, looking forward to it. Bye-bye.